Hi, welcome back. I'm Wayne Cogfield and we're on page 68 in Guitar Landscapes, and today we're going to be talking about the importance of the dominant 7th chord. Now listen to these two chords. We've got a C major 7 and then an E minor 7. Now these two chords actually belong to two different keys. And as we listen to this chord progression, just the C major 7 and the E minor 7, it tends to imply to our ears that we're in the key of C. But that's not all we need to know. When we look at a chord progression, we need to look at everything that's going on in a song. Now, when I see C major 7, I know that it's the 1 chord in the key of C, but I also know that it's the 4 chord in the key of G. And I know that E minor is the 3 chord in the key of C, and it's also the 6 chord in the key of G. So I know those numbers can be a little bit confusing, but if you go back and look at your chart, you'll see that what I'm telling you is true. So these two chords can exist in two different keys. Now if I add a D7th to this chord progression, it really changes the way your ear is going to perceive the chords. So you can see that D7th really changes things, and it's because of the introduction of the F sharp note, and that F sharp note only belongs to the key of G when we're looking at the comparison between the two keys, C and G. There is no F sharp in the key of C. So the F sharp in the key of G and the F sharp that's in that D7 chord tells us that the chord progression is actually now in the key of G. You can see when I play the G chord at the end, it makes the chord progression sound final. So it really is interesting how chords work and how they interact. One of the most important things you need to learn when you're looking at chord progressions or writing a song is how do these chords relate to each other. Because once you understand that, then you'll understand a lot more about the harmony and what's going on in the song. Now on page 69, let's take a look at some new chord voicings. What we're going to play here is this voicing, 1, 7, 3, 5. The order that I'm playing these notes in, that is what's called the voicing. So this voicing has the root in the bass, then the 7th, then the 3rd, then the 5th. And it's important to know that about a chord, what the voicing is, because then you can manipulate that chord and turn it into other chords. For instance, if I wanted to play a C6 chord, all I'd have to do is take the major 7th out of the chord and put the 6th in its place. And I'd have to change the fingering a little bit, but now I've gone from a C major 7th chord to a C6 chord. Now what if I wanted to build a chord that had a major 7th but had a raised 5th? Then all I would have to do is know where the 5th is and move it up a fret. I changed the fingering a bit here too, but the notes are root, 7, 3, sharp 5 now. If I wanted to flat the 5th, I'd go back to the original form. Here's the 5th, root, 7, 3, 5, and I would lower that note 1 fret. So now from this one form, I built 3 other chords. C major 7, C6, C major 7 sharp 5, C major 7 flat 5. And it's important to note that the chord name tells me all of the intervals that are inside that chord. So by knowing that, I can build the chord without having a picture, a little chord diagram on a sheet of paper. I don't need that picture because I can just build it by knowing how to change the intervals and move them to other intervals inside the scale. So continuing on with this, let's build a minor 7th chord and then deal with some changes and alterations of that chord. So here's C major 7th. If I flat the 7th and flat the 3rd, I can end up with a C minor 7th. So root, flat 7, flat 3, and 5 on minor 7th chord. Now if I wanted to turn this into a minor 6 chord, then I would just go to the same 6 that we went to in the previous And there we go. I've got a C minor 6. So now I've got the root, the 6th, the flat 3rd, and the 5th. If I wanted to turn it into a minor 7th flat 5 chord, I'll go back to the original minor 7 form. Now here's the 5, root, flat 7, flat 3, 5. Lower that note, C minor 7 flat 5. I could also raise the 5th and get this nice chord right here of a Steely Dan sounding chord, a C minor 7th with the raised 5th. So that's root, flat 7, flat 3, sharp 5. Now we could also have major 7th chord forms in this as well, but with the flatted 3rd. So here's a C minor major 7 chord. Mysterious sounding chord. We actually play this chord quite a bit in music. You usually hear it in this kind of context where you hear that kind of a movement. But anyway, here's C minor with the major 7th. So root, major 7, flat 3rd, 5. And I could flat the 5th on this one as well. Root, flat, or root, major 7th, flat 3rd, flat 5. I could raise the 5th, I should say. Root, major 7th, flat 3rd, sharp 5. So that's a C minor major 7 sharp 5 chord. So all of these chords have strange names, but you have to remember that the name of the chord has to tell you what the intervals inside the chord are doing, whether they're being raised or lowered. Now, if we continue on to the dominant 7th version, here's the root, the flatted 7th, the 3rd, and the 5th. That's your dominant 7th chord, just your plain old C7 chord in this case. Now if I want to flat the 5th, well here's my 5th, I lower it, C7 flat 5. If I want to raise the 5th, C7 sharp 5 or C7 augmented 5th. Now, all of these chords I built from the original voicing that I had, 1, 7, 3, 5. And all I've done is just take different notes in that original chord form and raise or lower them to create all these other chords. So you can see how important it is to know chord voicings. If you know your chord voicings, you can do all kinds of things to the chords you already know. Here's that C major 7th chord that we started with. Here's another C major 7th chord. Here's another one, and here's another one. And each one of those is a different voicing. 1, 3, 5, 7, 3. 1, 5, 7, 3, 5. 5, 1, 3, 7. And the one we've been playing, 1, 7, 3, 5. And a lot of people know this one too. It's not in the book, but that's 1, 3, 5, 7. We actually did this one in the previous chapter. Remember, we turned it into a dominant chord, we turned it into a minor chord, we turned it into a minor 7 flat 5. And that's really all we're doing with these other voicings. So knowing the voicings of your chords is really a great thing because you don't need the big chord book anymore. You can just look at your guitar and adapt the chords to what you need to play. Well, this has been quite a complicated chapter if we look back at all the things we've learned, but it's really not that hard. It's only complicated from the standpoint that you need to start memorizing some of your chord voicings and learning how to adapt those notes and change them around. You don't need to master all of this in a day. Just take one chord voicing, like take the one we started with today, and see how many ways you can adapt that one. Live with that one for a month. Then try doing maybe this one and do the same thing. Where's the 5th? If I raise the 5th, what do I get? If I lower the 3rd, what do I get? If I lower the 3rd and the 7th, what do I get? What if I lower the 7th to the 6th? What would I call that chord? If you start going through these paces like this, you'll learn this material much quicker. And it's not that big a strain on the brain. If you stretch it out over a little bit of time, gradually learn it and build on it as you go. Well, thanks a lot for joining me. Don't forget to go to the website, Guitar-Gps.com. I'm constantly uploading new material there so that you can get chord voicings to work with and play around with, and hopefully have some new ideas to build with and write some great music with. So thanks a lot for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.